Rosa.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 10:07 at WPSL 1590, talking the Treasure Coast, and you're on Careology. Good morning. Why, Roxy, you've changed.
I have. It's Miles McGrath here.
How are you?
I'm doing good, Greg. How are you?
Good. It's been so long since I've seen you.
I'm telling you, that swap shop, you guys were dancing down, you were dancing down the hallway doing the conga.
Oh, gee,
You had the
nuts.
polka band here. We had the accordions going.
Oh.
You have to have a tour like of the studio. The things that go on here, it's unbelievable.
No, wait till the Christmas kids start. Yeah, we'll have groups all over the place in here. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well,
Crazy.
Well, thanks for having me on. This is Careology. For those that don't know, Careology is a subset of CareBag, and our job at CareBag is to provide support for our friends without walls. Some people call them homeless, but we like to provide hygiene products, toothpaste, shampoo, soap for folks that are in that position in life. We have 2 mobile shower units that we run up and down the Treasure Coast. We have a mobile pantry van that we deliver these items to the different food bank locations. And it is a mission of love and a mission of caring, and that is where the name Careology comes from. And it was founded by Roseanne Brown, affectionately known as Roxy, and she'll be on next week to run the show. But she asked me to remind our listeners about a special event we have coming up in October on the 14th. It's going to be a community baby shower, and we're asking members of the community if you've got extra diapers. We're going to be putting care bags together, actually, care baskets for young moms, expectant moms that are in need of these items. So I would ask you to go to our website, carebagfl.org, reach out if you've got these items or you want to have them delivered via Amazon. We have an Amazon account you can go to, but you can find more information on our website.
Is this the first time you've done this?
I'm so glad you asked, Greg. This has been a dream that she's had for several years, and this will be our first annual CareBag community baby shower.
I love it. I think that's great.
Our goal is to get 100 moms there, and I think we're halfway there. We've reached out to community organizations that service this population, and it's starting to build some momentum. So if you're a willing volunteer or you have items such as this you can donate, we would greatly appreciate it. Or if you know somebody who's an expectant mom, visit the website and we will take care of that individual, make sure they're invited.
That is so cool. Hey, congratulations. That's neat.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Greg.
and a couple of the moms that we met this weekend as Christmas kids are doing back to school clothes for the homeless families, and wow, they've got stories. And the economy is just killing me.
It certainly can be, and it's that's why if you've got a lot, it's a blessing to give, and it gives you a chance. So if you're on the prosperous side of things right now, it's a good opportunity to share some of that prosperity with those that are on the other side of things at the moment. So doesn't mean they have to stay there, but you can help them out.
Yeah, you betcha.
So as part of Careology, I reached out to a friend of mine who works in the wellness field. His name is Dr. Jake Hyde. Jake, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
He's reaching out to us on Zoom today, and his mission is to help people experience deeper healing and higher consciousness. He's passionate to see improved health outcomes and standards of living for individuals as well as communities by teaching and training on true holistic principles and the integration of one's body, mind, heart, and spirit. Now, I can't think of a better fit for Careology than that, Jake. Welcome to the show.
Well, I feel quite welcome, Miles. Thanks for having me.
In looking at your bio, I was really amazed by your background in the different fields, from chiropractic care to bioenergy synchronization, emotional freedom, all these modalities that you help your clients with. I always like to start out when I'm interviewing guests, what attracted you to this healing field? How did you get involved with healing?
Um, well, it didn't come by it easily. I didn't think I was going to do this when I was young. So I didn't start off as when I was kids, I wanted to be a doctor or specifically a chiropractor. I was an adult in my mid 20s in the corporate world trying to figure out what would be more meaningful work to do in the world. So my undergrad is actually business and philosophy. So I kind of got the two bookends of academia. Try because again, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just wanted to learn. And then my mid 20s, the big conversation in America was healthcare. I think I was a little more politically minded at the time. And so I was listening to the conversation, and healthcare conversations were really just economics conversations. So I started looking into, well, why is the healthcare burden so ginormous in this country? And it occurred to me that most of the healthcare issues were lifestyle based. So I didn't go into this work initially wanting to do any type of particular modalities or care. I just wanted to enter into the health conversation professionally. And I started interviewing doctor, like any doctor that I was connected to, whether it was a church or a doctor that I've had in the past or family friends. I was trying to meet them for lunch or coffee or just get in front of them, ask them what they did, what their life was like, what their philosophy towards health was. And unexpectedly, my mind was blown by a chiropractor that my mom was seeing. And that wasn't on my radar. I had never been to a chiropractor personally, but this guy blew my mind just on how he thought, how he balanced family and work and his principles. And so he let me shadow him for an afternoon and my mind was blown. So he's a doctor of chiropractic. And like I think a lot of people that aren't in this world, you can start to think, well, chiropractors, they're spine doctors and they treat people with their hands. And that is a general truth, but chiropractors certainly can specialize. And what this guy was doing made no sense to me. So it set me down a path towards exploration of how the nervous system works, how
Sounds like you had a
physiology is
paradigm shift
informed by
there.
the thought. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. My health education at that time was largely, let's say, Men's Health magazine was kind of my resource. This was like pre YouTube having useful content on there. It was pre your health influencers on Instagram and TikTok or whatever. So you had to read about health for the most part. And Men's Health magazine actually got me kind of sick. So in my mid 20s, I actually was not doing very well health wise while I was in a paradigm shift, as a matter of fact. But major paradigm shift really changed my perspective to from like a mechanistic or reductionist approach to science to a more holistic view. And that doctor turns out is quite unusual and he's still a mentor of mine and a teacher of mine to this day. But in school, I just learned everything that I could. So in grad school, you have access to all these great teachers, these modalities, and I just absorbed everything. And I came out of chiropractic school thinking I'd be more like a sports chiropractor. So I kind of strayed from the intentional path of what my teacher did to doing more athletics and injury. So I was into functional movement, if you're familiar with that concept, and nutrition. But the results were coming from doing this mind body work. Not that I didn't help people structurally, doing the more mechanic types of treatment, but when I shifted to some of my training, and mind you, I really didn't know what I was doing too much at this point when it came to the mind body work, like some of those techniques you mentioned. I think this time I was working with bioenergetic synchronization technique, also known as BEST. And I was still in like a residency, so I had a supervising doc. And she finally let me kind of play around with this because she had a client who she was just kind of sick of working with, frankly. This person had chronic pain. She was in her mid 40s on disability. So pain down her spine, burning pain down all four extremities. She's seen all your neurologists, nutritionists, acupuncturists, uh, and no luck. So 18 months into this journey, she's just a miserable person. And my boss just didn't have the patience for her on this particular day. I think she was coming twice a month at the time. And my boss let me have her, and she said, I don't care what you do, just do whatever. So for the first time in like a residency, I was able to play with these concepts. And she came in a week later. So normally it's 2 weeks, but she came in smiling. First time I've seen her smile. And she had regained a lot of function in her legs and one of her arms. One of the arms still hurt, but the other ones were doing pretty good. And so my boss had me just keep going with it. And I think it was 3 appointments maybe before she was 90% out of pain. She's kind of off and on pain in her hands at that point. And so my boss started letting me work with all these chronic cases, whether it was migraines or IBS or multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, some interesting cases. Now, of course, chiropractors aren't treating Parkinson's, they're supporting the care of a person with a disease because most states chiropractors can lose their license for treating something outside their scope. So it's not like I'm treating multiple sclerosis. I'm trying to optimize the expression of health in this person who happens to have MS, for example. And we started seeing very exciting results. And so by the time I got my own practice, I was doing probably 90% this work.
So you got thrown into the deep end.
You could say that. Yeah. And now it's evolved. Now 90% of my work is doing this mind body work virtually. So now I have clients from all over the globe currently. It's pretty interesting.
What a
So
story.
quite a journey.
So do you find more satisfaction out of that type of work versus the sports medicine? Do you still see clients in the sports medicine umbrella?
Yeah, when I'm seeing people in person, and if that's what's indicated, so it's funny because you think like, I guess when I was doing sports chiropractic as an intern, I was seeing like CrossFit athletes with injuries and things like that. I think a lot of the value of my training in that is now with the aging population and retraining movement patterns for them such that they can well, have a, I guess you can call it higher quality of life and age more gracefully. So if you can start training movement patterns and developing muscles that maybe are on the path of atrophy from disuse, get them back in top shape. I think that's kind of the athletic training I'm doing now, especially living where we live in Florida, where that's of a lot of value. So I do that part time. Again, most of my practice is virtual, doing the mind body work or the neuro emotional reprogramming is what it would fall under. However, I do see people in person a couple afternoons a week, and a lot of the retraining is for people that are aging that might be having chronic pain, hips, knees, feet, low back, neck, and you can start giving them very basic exercises to retrain, and not just retraining a muscle, it's reconnecting the neural pathways. It's like the communication from the brain to that particular tissue to get it reactivated, and then their hips start working well again, their low back's good, they get more energy, they get to go do more things that they enjoy. So I do find a lot of satisfaction in that.
Doctor, is it more
So
difficult doing the remote medicine than actually having a patient in front of you?
yeah, well, it's definitely more difficult explaining what I do when people ask about it. So the remote stuff is a little more difficult to get into. But as far as the actual application of these techniques, virtual was initially much harder, but it really sharpened my skills for the neuroemotional work because before I think I always knew I could fall back on my hands and some, the person would get their money's worth. So I just did that. And so I never was forced into really developing these mind body tools to that extent because I could always fall back, get my hands on a person, and then I feel like, okay, they're getting their money's worth for sure. But then during the pandemic, I was living in Nashville at the time, and the city of Nashville was closed down for quite a long time, and people wanted to continue to do their work. So I started doing some virtual work. I didn't promote it at the time, but if people reached out, I would do it. And that really forced me to take it even more seriously, I guess, than it already was. So it was hard at first. Now it is, it's second nature to me at this point. But I guess it would be harder for me to train someone to do it than I've trained many people to do these techniques in person over the years, like other practitioners, doctors, massage therapists, things like that. And it would be hard to train someone to do the virtual work that I do.
Great. That
Not
was a great,
impossible.
great question, Greg. My thing is it, do you feel like there's a linkage because you mentioned community in your mission in some of the techniques of this energy work? Is there a linkage to the energy in the community as a whole? Do you feel like there's a way to apply some of these things you've learned on the individual to a community level?
Absolutely. So I look at health in various categories because when it comes to your health, you can't, for example, weather or how your boss treats you necessarily, but you can start aiming at different categories of your life with asking yourself these six essential questions, which is one of them being, how am I connecting with others? Being one of the fundamental six. So that connection has implications all across the board on how well your body functions. So yeah, human connection, social health is vital. We are communal beings. So this idea of survival of the fittest might be actually a pretty dangerous philosophy, all things said and done, when it comes to humans, because what makes us, let's say, better survivors when it comes to this model of evolution is the fact that we can live in large communities better than most animals, definitely better than any mammal. And so the fact that we can cooperate and we can build things together, we can collaborate, we can create together, we can protect each other, we can look out for each other, makes us the most fit. So a lot of people took on that idea of survival of the fittest is you got to be the strongest, you got to work the hardest, you got to have the most things, you have to acquire, you have to defend. When in reality, what makes humans successful is our ability to connect and build communities as more of a tribe. And so we've now separated ourselves from that model that our ancestors built life as we know it from. And so we're living surrounded by people and feeling separate at the same time. So I can get into that more if you want, Miles,
No,
because I know that
that's
matters
number
to you.
one. You got five more to go.
Oh, you want to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. And we can dive into any of these deeper if we have time, because each one of these is potentially an hour long conversation. So the first one's probably the most obvious. It's what am I consuming? So that's nutrition, for example, primarily. What am I eating? What am I drinking? What am I not eating or drinking? Supplements. But you can also consume other things too. So I would put light in this category. Am I getting quality light into my body? Uh, am I getting, well, I also put content. So entertainment is something you consume as well. And so, I know there's people that would never eat fast food because they're above that, but then they might just be doom scrolling on their devices or watching garbage TV. And it's like, well, that's your fast food right there, then, right? That's your guilty pleasure because the food that you consume is important, right? It's the building blocks from which your body regenerates from. However, your brain feeds primarily, yes, on nutrition is important for brain too, but how it's stimulated is really important on how it develops. So if you're consuming garbage into your mind, your output is going to be garbage as well. So number one, that's the first one I always bring up because it's the one people are most connected to. Their food primarily is nutrition, or what am I consuming?
Well, I like
Any
the
questions?
bridge
Smiles.
you built. I like the bridge you built in terms of consumption of light, and then taking it to the media that we're consuming on our phones and our television sets, in our ears, and that too is food for our awareness. And I really like that. That was helpful for me because you're like, oh, I didn't eat anything bad today, but you were ingesting all this data that maybe was negative. That
Don't watch daytime television.
Oh my goodness. Yeah,
among other
daytime
things, but
television, the 24-hour news cycle can be pretty harmful.
just the awareness of saying, okay, how much am I taking in, and being aware of it instead of, because I used to be a news junkie and I would have, anytime I was in the car, I'd be, but one day I became aware and I just said, well, maybe a half an hour a day is all I need.
There is a station in
Yeah.
Los Angeles, KFWB. Give us 22 minutes, we'll give you the world.
There you go.
That's all you need.
That's it. So what's number
Yeah,
two?
that has something to do with our nervous system too, though, because I don't think we're designed to know about every disaster happening on this planet. And I think that can give us a certain sense of anxiety or powerlessness. Because if you're hearing about this tragedy happening in this community across the world, your humanity is programmed to care deeply about it. But if you can't do anything for it, it creates this sense of anxiety, I think, that we're all experiencing. Now, we live in a global world, and it's cool that you can donate money to like relief in Hawaii, for example. That is cool, and some people should be doing that, but not everyone can handle all the bad news. So if someone down the street is going through a tragedy, you show up, you help them with their housework, or you bring food over to them. And that's what our hearts are really designed for. It's like tragedy in the community, we show up for each other. But now the news is just, here's all the tragedy and you can't do anything about it. It's not easy for most people to consume that. It starts rewiring your nervous system to, well, believe that you're inherently unsafe when the world is not that. There's danger in it and there's tragedy for sure, but it's wiring your brain to think that is the world. So that's my little rant on that. You want number two? So number two is how am I moving? So it's activity or lack of activity in some cases. And so I make those number one and number two, not because they're most important, because they're the most mainstream. Like diet and exercise are pretty mainstream. Although I would say, like, when it comes to consumption, consuming natural light isn't necessarily mainstream just yet, but I think it will be. We're going to stray from that model of the sun is going to kill you to the sun is a life source for you. It's a primary nutrient source, actually, sunlight. So that might be the paradigm shift there. But yeah, diet and exercise, both fairly mainstream. When it comes to exercise, it's highly variable based on the person. But what isn't variable is that activity is life and inactivity is a pathway towards disease and dysfunction.
Speaking of inactivity, we're going to take a little break here. We'll be back in about a minute and a half. Jake, thank you so much. We'll be right back.
Are worth, bring them to St. Lucie Jewelry and Coin, and their friendly staff will tell you, and they'll pay you top dollar. Hi, it's Evan 9 from the morning show, and I can personally tell you from experience that St. Lucie Jewelry and Coin is the place to go for all your jewelry needs.
Hi, this is Hawk Levy from St. Lucie Jewelry and Coins. I want to tell you all thank you for voting us #1 again. Best jewelry and coin dealer, best gold and silver buyer, and best jewelry store.
You know the demand has never been more for fine jewelry, signed jewelry pieces, coins, coin collections, paper money, Rolex, and all luxury watches, even design designer purses. You ask why you should sell to St. Lucie Jewelry and Coin? It's real simple. They buy your jewelry as jewelry and not scrap. They resell everything on the international auction platform and in their local store. St. Lucie Jewelry does free confidential appraisals and house calls as well. St. Lucie Jewelry and Coin, located at US 1 and Walton Road in the Publix Plaza.
Hi, this is Roxy from Careology, and I just want to talk about volunteering. Volunteers don't necessarily have the time, but they have the heart. It takes courage and dedication to offer your time and skills to help out a cause that is a noble act that deserves recognition. Volunteering is a great way to make a difference in our community, and CareBag needs your help. We are looking for dedicated volunteers. So please get a pen, get a paper, and take down this number. It's 772 222 7399. Call us and let us know you're interested. We are looking for volunteers for the evening hours between 5 and 8 p.m. to go to our soup kitchens with our new mobile hygiene pantry. I look forward to hearing from every one of you. And remember, volunteers don't necessarily have the time, but they have the heart. Thank you.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
10:33, you're on Careology with Miles McGrath.
Oh, it's good to be back. And let me reintroduce our guest today, Dr. Jake Hyde. And we're talking about some of the strategies that we can have to be aware of our health, what we're consuming, how we move as part of optimizing our holistic way of being in the world. Dr. Jake Hyde, you were talking about movement when we last came off the air. Can you take us a little deeper into that and then go to number 3?
Would love to, Miles. All right, so movement it's really important that you move. Ideally, just do something that you enjoy. It's highly variable, so what is going to be most beneficial for me certainly won't be true for Miles or for my wife, my 3-year-old, or my mom. You have to find the thing that works for you. However, it does seem to be that occasional yourself a little bit, meaning push yourself towards what's called the zone of proximal development. It's the zone of kind of approaching failure, kind of sitting right below that. So it's at the extent of your competency or capacity just below failure. That's what triggers a very large hormonal shift in the body, biochemical change. And so again, that's different for everybody. If you're a world-class athlete or someone who's been inactive for years, you just find what that is for you. And you can hire a professional for that if you want, but you just get an idea. Every now and then you do something that forces you to take big, full breaths. It's just be stepping up on a box 20 times for some people, or for some people it's doing sprints out of the park. But every now and then, push yourself towards the limit. That seems to be a benefit. And then just move around. Sitting down can be quite devastating over time. So activity is not, we don't have to get into that many specifics because it's going to have to be individualized to get into specifics here.
So what was the third facet here that's important after consumption?
The third is third one is how am I resting? So a lot of us think that rest is inactivity. So it's like, oh, I rest when I close my eyes at night. And that's certainly important, but rest is a lot more than that. To me, for humans, rest needs to be somewhat rejuvenating. So that the difference would be like with your cell phone, you can turn off your cell phone and that's going to keep the battery from draining further. But ultimately, your phone needs to be recharged at some point, right? And that's kind of us as well. So resting activities could be things that are rejuvenating for you, which could be, prayer, meditation, journaling, some creative expression that you feel good at and you find joy in doing, dancing, painting, writing music, playing music. Cooking can be one for sure. I know you and I share that, Miles. We had a pizza off once.
That's right.
It's quite enjoyable for me.
I think
Uh,
it was an eye opener.
yeah, well, I had a great time.
Me too.
And at the end of it was pizza.
That's
So
right.
what a time. What a time we had. I don't think we declared a winner. I think just everybody won that
It's because we knew that I was the winner.
night.
Yeah.
But yeah, creative expression. Well, I concede then. We'll have to have a rematch. So, rejuvenating activity. So, one way to think about this would be stress is kind of reactive activity where you're reacting to life as it's happening, and something that is more restful would be directed activity, something more intentional where you feel more in control. Again, stress doesn't mean bad, that means more context, but because you need stress to be healthy as well. If you don't have any stress, you're not going to grow or develop. But resting is going to be directed activity. So, for example, if you and I are going to make a fun meal together, right? We got our music going, we have our ingredients ready to go, we got all the time in the world, and we're enjoying it. That can be very restful, even though it's technically a chore. Some people would say cooking is tedious and they'd rather not do it, right? That's why a lot of people order out or whatever. But it can be really restful if you enjoy it, you feel good at it, and you have like the time and space for it. So here we are, we're cooking. This feels restful. I'm filling my battery energetically. And this is directed activity. But then my wife can say, "Oh, so and so's coming over. Is that okay? Can we fit her in?" And it's like, "Sure. Well, I'm serving dinner in 20 minutes, and so is a vegan, so we're gonna have to accommodate her entirely. So now it's your Iron Chefing under time crunch, trying to that your friend who's coming over can eat too. And then all of a sudden you can go from this directed activity, feeling restful in this process, into now it's stress. Now it's wearing you out because you're reacting to a brand new variable that was unexpected. Again, stress isn't good or bad. It needs more context. But that's the difference between directed activity and reactive activity.
Doctor, how do you turn your mind off at night?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, part of that is going to be discipline, like learning any other skill. And turning it off is probably the wrong idea because that takes like a Tibetan monk level of discipline to really turn off your mind. So I wouldn't recommend turning it off. I would recommend just setting a plan for what you're going to think about. So with me, and I wasn't always a good sleeper. In fact, I really suffered in my 20s from failed sleep and insomnia. So what I started doing, well, in my early 20s, I would put on a show and fall asleep to it, like a lot of young people do. Not a great idea if you want to get sleep, but that distracted my mind enough to go unconscious. So what I did instead, that's a lot more healthier, is decide what I'm going to think about before my head hits the pillow. So I have a plan and I have thought. I installed a thought curfew for myself, which means certain things don't get thought about after a certain time in the night. I created this idea in grad school because the stress of school was ruining my sleep, which made school harder. So what I did was set a curfew for studying or doing work 30 minutes before I wanted to be asleep. And then I noticed, well, my schoolwork, even if I put the books away, my schoolwork can still show up in my mind. So I created the idea of a thought curfew meeting. After a certain time, that just doesn't get brought up. And for some people, they need to write it down on a piece of paper next to them. So it's like, I'm not thinking about you. I'm just going to write you. You'll be there in the morning for me. But then what do you think about? So for me, it had to have nothing to do with my real life, nothing to do with problems specifically. And not that studying is a problem, but like the fear of failure in school is a problem. So it couldn't have anything to do with that. And so if you're a creative person, you could start thinking about designing a dream home. But if you're actually in a remodel in your life, like you're doing work on your actual house, thinking about a remodel before bed's a bad idea because that's real life problems that are coming to mind. So you want to shut down the problem solving factory in the mind. So anything you're thinking about that creates a problem or leads to problem solving, I think is off the table for me anyway. So I would think of something that I enjoy because your mind's going to have to want to do it. If it doesn't want to do it, it's going to find something else to think about. So, for example, for me, this is personal information I haven't told very many people, but something that I did, I don't have to do this anymore, but I did this for years, is I really like movies and I have a really good memory. Something that was fun for me was to replay a movie in my mind as accurately as possible. All the details, the music, the dialogue, and that was just kind of fun, and I'd be asleep in a minute. So
I
what
do the
this meant
same.
was,
I do the same thing, but I replay the day, and I can't seem to get past lunchtime before I'm asleep.
you have a, I think, Miles, you just have a clean conscience. I think it's easy for you to rest.
I don't know about
Some of us,
I don't know, I don't know about that one.
some of us can't think about our day, probably. Too much regret in our days. So instead of replaying the day, we'll replay a movie that has nothing to do with our lives. And if you like movies, which I do, I find it enjoyable. So that's not going to work for everybody. You can find something that you enjoy thinking about that's not going to connect to actual life problems. So instead of turning off your mind, just give your mind something enjoyable to do that doesn't turn on the problem solving factory. You got to shut the factory down at some point.
Greg, are you going to give that a try?
Yeah, and eliminate those blue screens late at night.
Yeah. So blue screens are one thing, but really any artificial light can be disruptive to sleep. So bare minimum light in your house is the idea. Definitely no overhead lights. So if you have lights in the house in the evening, I recommend lamps on a end table or something. So keep it almost like the sun setting. You want your light to be on the horizon, not up above you. And you can wear glasses to filter blue lights if you like to be on screens, or if your life kind of requires that you are. Maybe you're doing work or studying at night on your computer, something like that. So I'm not going to be a big stickler about that, although I know neurologists that are really tight with those rules. In fact, if they're going to have a light on at night, they're going to have a red light in their home. So they have red light bulbs that they'll put on if they need lights in their house at night. That's a bit dramatic, but if you're a really bad sleeper, it might be worth trying.
Wow. So that's
But also part of getting good sleep at night is getting really good light in the morning too, because that's going to set your biological rhythm. So the more morning sunlight you can get, and maybe not the more, but like an hour is a good target to try to get natural light into your eyes in the morning. And that's going to fill your melatonin stores. It's going to help you get the sleepy signals when the time is right. It's going to kind of set your cortisol biological rhythm too, which is going to help you navigate stress throughout your day. So morning sunlight is a really great idea.
wow. So it's taking in, it's resting, and the light is rejuvenating in the morning. Great combination. Just being aware of these things is powerful. What's number 4?
Number 4 is, how am I breathing? So a lot of people don't think about breath as a thing to make choices about. We all inherently know that if we're not breathing, that's real bad news, but we don't necessarily think about if we breathe better, if that could have benefits. But in the like holistic world, breathing's becoming more of a thing, thanks to pioneers like Wim Hof and the like. But you can do directed breathing activities that can really change the scope of your health in dramatic ways. But just breathing better plays a big role. So your subconscious that runs your autonomic nervous system, and your autonomic nervous system is what runs your physiology. So it's running the machinery. you can't speak to it directly. It doesn't really understand language. So if you're trying to tell yourself to calm down, for example, like, hey, Jake, just calm down. It doesn't understand that. It's not going to listen to that signal. However, if you intentionally slow your breath and deepen your breath, that will communicate to your body that there's no inherent threat in the present moment. So that will signal to your nervous system that it's okay, for example. Whereas telling yourself it's okay probably won't work. But changing your breath is a very strong signal that your body's going to listen to. Just for example, breathing through your nose makes a big difference. If you're a mouth breather, you have a whole plethora of health complications, or I should say, your risk of health complications go way up just by that fact alone. So mouth breathing, not a great idea. Obviously, if you're gasping for air because you did a hard workout, that's one thing. But even just going for a jog, breathing through your nose can be beneficial. So nose breathing, we can get into it if you want a little bit, or you can just trust me, much better for you. If you have kids out there that are mouth breathing, you want to retrain that ASAP. Consciously, just get them to change the habits. Now, if you're mouth breathing at night, which a lot of people are, which can lead to things like snoring, sleep apnea, and the like, there is mouth tape for sleeping that you might have seen on the internet. That is not a joke. That actually is quite helpful.
I have
Almost
seen
looks
that.
like hostage tape.
I have
You just
seen
see
that.
like a video.
What, gaffer's tape? What?
No, I wouldn't use gaffer's tape. I wouldn't use that. No, the mouth tape, if you really want to open your mouth, you open your mouth, no problem. But just while you're unconscious, it helps you keep your mouth closed so you're breathing through your nose at night. And then you can combine that with nose strips to open your airways at night. Just doing that alone, for example, can even lower your risk of heart disease significantly. So mouth breathing versus nasal
I
breathing, big difference there. And then
huge.
training your breath too, that's part of exercise and activity levels. But when you're asleep, you're subconsciously breathing, and people's breath typically gets worse. So if you're looking at their oxygen saturation, their OSATs, for example, below 95% or below 90 for sure is like danger zone. You don't want to see oxygen saturation levels below that. But while you sleep, most people will go down 5 to 10%. So you can go to the doctor and your OSAT's 95, which is acceptable. But at night, that can go below 90 or down to 85 potentially, which is not good oxygenation. And that's because if you're not training your secondary breathing muscles by exercising your breathing, like again, forcing yourself to have to take big full breaths, all these secondary muscles around your shoulders and your ribs and the like, then your breathing performance while sleeping is going to be worse too. So there's a lot of factors that play there. But yeah, breath is important. If you want a practical tip, I recommend setting like alarms throughout your day to take a breathing break, a 1 minute break. I used to do this and it made a difference. Just 1 minute, I'm taking intentional breaths. You can use a particular method like 4 square breathing, box breathing, or 4-7 breathing. There's a lot of great ones out there. And some are better for certain types of applications, but just taking a breathing break will be good for you. I recommend just giving that a try.
That is great advice. And there's really not many excuses that people can offer that says, oh, I can't take a breathing break. I could see people saying, well, I can't get morning light because I got to get to work early and things like that. And that's understandable. But breathing break, we could all take a breathing break. So that's
Yeah, if
awesome.
you don't have a minute in your day, then there's many things wrong at the moment.
Yeah. Breathing break,
Many things.
totally, I'm on board with that. So that
Yeah, you could
is,
do it during your commute too. It's great. You can do breathing wherever. So that is useful.
so number one was, what am
All
I
right, the fifth
taking?
one is connecting, which we already talked about.
Right. Connecting. We talked about what am I taking in? How am I moving? How am I resting? How am I breathing?
Doing.
What's number 6? Because we talked about how connecting in the community first. So what's the 6th one?
6 is the most important one, and it's how am I thinking? And that's what a lot of my virtual work revolves around, is understanding what the mind is up to. And if your thought quality is poor, your health quality will be poor. And there's just no getting around that. Probably your relationships could be suffering too. Your career could be, your finances. There's a lot of indications to poor thinking. And it's not your fault. So the neurologists say the typical person is conscious of maybe 5% of their thoughts. Most of their thoughts are subconsciously driven, which means they're based on the past. It's almost like relics of past experiences just kind of replaying in your head. Now, the more conscious person will increase that percentage, obviously, and you can train yourself to be more conscious through whatever mindful activities you have, like meditation, contemplative prayer, things like that. But nonetheless, most of your day and most of your decision making, for example, is subconscious. So techniques like the ones that I use can help shed a light on some of the programming playing in the background, bring it to the surface, reevaluate it, make a new subconscious rule about it, and then change how you're responding to your environment. Because most of your thoughts are a response to your environment. There's some stimulus in your environment coming in through your senses, and that elicits a thought to come to your mind.
What is there a
Not
book?
a thought you chose.
Is there a book that speaks
program.
to some of these items you're talking about, or some books you would recommend the audience take a look at?
Yeah, okay, I'll do like a short list of, I think, what should be core curriculum for everybody. So I would start with Letting Go by Dr. David R. Hawkins. I would do The Biology of Belief, Dr. Bruce Lipton. I would do Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And then this isn't very specifically about what we've just been talking about, but Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl, I think, is an incredible read for just getting perspective in your life about the challenges that you're facing. It's a book about choosing your response to life. And this comes from a doctor who survived concentration camps in Germany. So he knows a thing or two about dealing with stress.
Man's Search for Meaning. It's amazing.
Man's Search for Meaning. Great book. Not for everybody. That might be a tough read for some, because he does share his experiences in the concentration camps, but nonetheless a powerful read if you can go there with your mind.
Now, if somebody wants to work with you or get in contact with you, Jake, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way would be going to my website, which is jakehyde.com, HYDE. And interestingly enough, for your listeners, I just taught at this wellness seminar in the Keys this last weekend. And I put up an option for a free consult as a gift to the people that attended that event. So that's still on my website for now. So you go to my website right now, you can actually sign up for a free consultation as long as there's spaces for it, which I don't imagine people are necessarily rushing to talk to me. But if you do want to have a conversation about maybe some chronic health issues you're dealing with, chronic pain, sleep disorders, mood disorders, digestive problems, things like that, or you want to just talk about your husband or something like that. A lot of people seem to want to talk about other people's problems, but nonetheless, that consult that can help at least direct you into a place that might be a benefit for you if you're not a good fit to work with me necessarily one-on-one. But in that conversation, you at least learn something important about what's going on from a subconscious standpoint, and then you can make appropriate decisions for yourself from that point on.
Now you live in Stuart, Florida, and you work out of a unique little enclave down there called Spiritwell. What is Spiritwell?
Yeah, shout out to these people. So Spiritwell Sensory Lounge, downtown Stuart, Florida, is just a safe haven for good vibes, really kind, generous people. So it's a practitioner place where they have over a dozen skilled practitioners in various disciplines, all kind of holistic, naturalistic disciplines, where they work, separate hours. So I work 2 afternoons there a week, Wednesdays and Friday afternoons. My wife, who's a massage therapist, does some work there, and it's a really fun community. And they do a ton of events. So it's an event space too. So if you can follow Spirit Well Sensory Lounge on social media, you can see all the different things they got going on, from like sound healing to various meditations, yoga classes. I think they have a toga party coming up. So sometimes it's just fun. It doesn't have to be necessarily about health. It's about community, which, as we now know from this discussion, is health. Community and health are not separate. So check them out. And if you're local and you do want to work in person with me, not virtual, that is the place to do it.
Got it. What are some of the areas personally you're expanding into, kind of some edges that you're pushing for yourself that you're looking at?
I'm always kind of pushing the edges of just understanding them, my shadow, so to speak, kind of searching in the uncomfortable places to kind of figure out what drives me, particularly where fear might play a motivating factor in my life. So I'm always trying to make myself uncomfortable in one way or another. What's challenging me right now is I've decided I'm going to create some online courses that people can do. And I felt resistance in this for a while. Like I don't know what it is that I'm afraid of, but I have material. I'm just not putting it out there for people to do. And maybe it's this, I'm still kind of hiding. I don't mind doing this conversation. I don't know how many people are listening. I'm thinking about talking to you two gentlemen, and that's all I'm really thinking about. When it comes to public work, I'm still kind of in hiding. So this season, I'm going to expose myself a little bit more to the public, some more online content, and those courses, just get them up and get them out there. That's the challenge that I'm undergoing at the moment.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. So you're going to have coursework at some point available on your website.
Yeah. Let's say I want to have my first course out by the end of October.
There you go. He said it right here on WPSL. This has been Careology. We've had a wonderful conversation with Dr. Jake Hyde. We've had some great input with one of the pros in the radio community, Greg Wyatt, who's, I think he's going to be one of my interviews one of these days, because his background is tremendous. So appreciate him chiming in here today. This is Miles McGrath, and this has been Careology. Thank you so much.
And doctor, I'm glad you didn't think about the 3 or 4 million people listening in 44 countries, but that's okay. This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.